everyone. My name is Dr. Maria Velez. I'm a medical oncologist at the University of California, Los Angeles. And today we're going to talk about everything you need to know about clinical trials. In episode 1, we're going to cover what are clinical trials and what is their purpose, followed by the clinical trial process, meaning what can you expect when you join a clinical trial. And lastly, we're going to talk about the pros and cons of joining a clinical trial. So what are clinical trials? Clinical trials are research studies that test new ways to prevent, diagnose, and treat cancer. Every treatment we use today, whether it be chemotherapy, immunotherapy, or targeted therapy, was once studied in a clinical trial. These trials follow very strict safety rules, and patients receive close monitoring from medical experts. Trials happen in phases, starting with phase 1 and going all the way up to phase 3. They start with small groups and expand to larger group of patients as we learn more about the medication that is being tested. And in this series, we'll talk about all the phases of clinical trials in detail. So for the clinical trial process and what to expect when you're thinking about joining a clinical trial, the first thing that will happen is that you will be evaluated to see if you meet the criteria that you need to meet in order to join a clinical trial. This is called the eligibility evaluation. Then, if you do join the trial, you will enroll and start treatment. And lastly, when you are part of the trial, you will have the ongoing care of the trial and the follow-ups needed. So for the first part, which is the eligibility evaluation, we will divide this in 2 phases, the screening process and the informed consent process. So all trials have rules that need to be met in order to determine whether you're eligible for them. These are called inclusion and exclusion criteria. So what do I mean by that? For instance, there are trials which require that you may have a certain stage of the cancer, a certain diagnosis, or that you may have had some certain therapies before you can join the study. As a part of the screening process, you will also likely need some blood tests and imaging studies to determine if you're eligible. And your medical history will be reviewed to determine eligibility. Once they determine that you're eligible for the study, you will move on to the informed consent process. During this process, you will be given a document that very clearly and in a very detailed manner explains the purpose of the study, the visits that the study requires, how often you have to go see your doctor, how often you need to get blood work checked, etc. You should have time to ask your doctor questions, and you will have time to discuss this document with your loved ones and your family before you decide to sign it. The last step of the informed consent process is to sign the document in front of your doctor. So usually you have to go see the doctor and sign the document as well as the investigator of the study. You will be signing the document together. It's very important that you ask that this document is handed out to you in a language that you understand. So for instance, if your primary language that you speak at home is Spanish, and that is your preferred language, then you should ask the investigator to give you this document in Spanish so that you can read it in the language that is more comfortable to you. Now, when you enroll and start treatment in the study, based on the type of study that you enroll into, specifically for phase 2 and phase 3 studies, you may be randomized, meaning you will be randomly allocated to a treatment group. Sometimes that means that you will get the investigational agent, or sometimes that means that you will get the standard of care. Placebos are rarely used in cancer trials, But if there's no standard treatment, a placebo may be included, and this will be disclosed to you in the informed consent process, which is why it's such an important part of determining whether you want to enroll in a clinical trial. Once you're part of the study, you will initiate the treatment, and this will happen in a location that is specific to that clinical trial. So sometimes patients do have to travel to other places, not necessarily the place in which they always get therapy, in order to get the investigational agent. And this is something that you should discuss with your doctor before you enroll in the study. You will have frequent checkups with the doctor and the investigational team in order to determine how you're doing in the study and to answer any questions that may arise at any point. You will likely be getting frequent scans to help the investigator team understand how the cancer is responding to the treatment. If the treatment is working, if the investigator team feels as though the scans show that the treatment is improving the cancer, or your cancer symptoms are improving and the treatment is well tolerated, you may be able to continue on this treatment. But if the cancer is getting worse on imaging, or if you're experiencing severe side effects that are intolerable, then you may have to consider and discuss with the investigator coming off the study and looking for other options. And if this treatment that is being investigated down the line becomes FDA approved, you may be able to get this treatment in the future as a part of standard of care. So what are the pros and cons of joining a clinical trial? So the pros are that you will gain access to cutting-edge treatments. You will have high level medical care and close monitoring. And you will be helping to advance cancer research, and this will certainly benefit future patients. The cons are that the treatment may or may not work better than standard options. Again, because it's being investigated, we don't know whether it's going to work. It's possible that you may experience side effects, some of which may be unknown. And not every trial covers all costs. And this is something that you should always talk to the investigator team about. And there is always a time commitment when you're joining a trial, just because there are certain visits that you do need to meet in order to make sure that you are following all the steps that the study requires.